If our three deans would move up here to the front table, Jacob, Annette, Mario. When I think of deans, the first thing I think of are good shepherds, because you're at that inception point for lawyers into the profession. And so what you do is incredibly valuable in terms of shepherding people into the process and into the profession. And what I asked our board members at our last meeting, and some of them may have forgotten, I hope not. If they forgot, they can look at the highlighted issues that Jordan just indicated they wanted to focus on, was to come and actually have questions for the three deans. We've done this in the past, and a lot of times the deans, you do a great job kind of telling us where you're at with your institutions and the programs, but I don't often see enough interaction. So with that said, I'll have you all, well, I'm not going to introduce you. I'll let you introduce yourselves, and then you're going to take questions from the board. Is that all right?
Yes.
You're all nodding yes. That's the first time any dean has ever nodded yes to me. So go ahead, Jacob. Introduce yourself.
Hi, Jacob Rooksby, Dean of Gonzaga Law School.
Welcome. Welcome.
Annette Clark, Dean of Seattle University School of Law.
Welcome, Annette.
Mario Barnes, the Dean of the University of Washington School of Law.
Very
Yeah.
good. Welcome.
Oh, dogs, there we go.
There's a slight bias in the room. I can sense
No
it.
bias, no bias.
All right.
It's all love. It's all love.
All right, governors, we just heard from our young lawyers with a whole host of questions about, and that number one issue being debt concern for the debt load for young lawyers. We don't have to start there, but I do want to see a governor shoot their hand in the air with a question or a concern for the deans. Paul.
So I try to stay pretty close to the students and try and understand how I can help them and engage with them. How can the Bar Association improve, student engagement, interest in the law, planning or thinking about the future, and just getting excited about the law? What can the Washington State Bar Association do on any of those points?
Let's go first.
You have the mic.
I can start. Thanks for that question, Paul. I think one of the things that occurs to me, and it occurs because Paul asked the question, he's on our adjunct faculty and taught for us this summer in a new institute that we have, a summer institute that's devoted to technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship. So relates a lot to what Jordan was talking about. It's a great way to interface with students, and so we have, and I know this is true of the other two law schools in the state as well, a vibrant adjunct faculty. And if you're willing to come in and share your expertise with students in the context of teaching a course, please don't hesitate to let us know. I always say they don't want to be us, right? Our students do not want to be deans. They want to be you. And the expertise that you bring in the classroom in terms of the real world of lawyering is incredibly important. And so we love that kind of interface. We're always looking for what are the additional ways to do that. With regard to this Summer Institute, we had day-long sessions where we brought in people from the legal community. One of the things I've been looking for is what's a way to get our students out. Sometimes they live in that law school bubble. We take such good care of them in terms of services, and they have so much to think about in terms of their studies. And so getting them to understand that a large part of their job while they're in law school is making those connections with the practicing bar, spending time with real lawyers. And so I don't have the answer to that. I do think our students are too cloistered, and so totally open to suggestions in terms of how do we get them out. And I'll stop after I say this. One of the things I love is the way in which some of the minority bar organizations have brought their meetings into law schools as a way to connect students up. And I'd love to see us do more of that. We really do. We tend to have space in that sense. So for noon meetings, that kind of thing, where the community comes in, and then I'm looking for ways, how do we get our students out?
So I second all of that, especially you thinking about us as localities, where you hold your meetings and sessions, and so that students can get an up-close and personal look at what's going on. I'd also just encourage you to invest in whatever way you see fit in a kind of marketing campaign that suggests what the WSBA can do for you. Because I think part of the problem is, and it's not a WSBA problem alone, it's an ABA problem, it's even with some of the minority bar associations. Students don't have a good sense of the tremendous opportunity and utility until, you know, probably 1 to 2 years into practice often. And if you could just convert that time frame earlier, we can make the space available, we can be partners in hosting. But I spoke to my 1L students who came this week, because we're a quarter school, you've been in session for a month, and I talked to them about ABA membership, which is free. It's free. They host a lot of meetings and sessions where they also give scholarships and sponsorships for students to come. It's great for networking. It's great for building your knowledge in areas that you claim to have interest in. And we have a very small portion of our students who opt in to membership unless we cajole them and say, this is a very good thing for you. And so they get so focused on the immediate goal of studying to become lawyers that they don't spend enough time thinking about who they will be as lawyers and the important structures in the profession to help them. So I think we can be, I know my school can be better partners in working with you to help them understand the importance of bar associations early on, so that by the time they pass the bar and they enter professions, they're already thinking about, you know, stepping in to not only membership, but already thinking potentially of ways in which they can be a leader in the profession.
Everyone should watch out when the three of us get together for dinner. It's a long dinner. So I'm just going to say, I will try to be brief. I echo the comments of my colleagues, and I think those are great suggestions. I think introduction to the bar needs to start in the 1L year. And we have done that at Gonzaga with visits from the executive director and governors in the past, right in orientation, so that they can understand that this is a profession. It's an education, but it's a profession first and foremost that they're entering. And we welcome your input and your visits. For those of you who are not in Spokane, we'd love to see you. And I think the suggestion of Annette for commissions and meetings and different groups of the bar to view us as a space that can be used. We're here for you in terms of opening up our doors for the benefit of our students.
Very good. Thank you, governors. We'll go with Alec, Gene, who's the hand over here? Dan, and then who was down at the end here? I missed. Paul, sorry. In that order.
Okay. So I would ask all three of you to address minority populations at your school, admissions, retentions, graduations. What are you doing? What are you seeing? I think of that especially, Mario, since we're still under the I-200 piece with a public institution, but if the three of you can address it.
So our struggle really is a struggle of netting the excellent students of color that we admit. We do have some sort of issues around application numbers in terms of the Pacific Northwest, generally speaking, get some less numbers of African American and Latinx student applications. But the truth is, if you look at our trouble or our challenge, it's between our admitted numbers and our enrolled numbers. And the real issue for us is for the students that we are admitting who are students of color, that most of our peer schools can offer them more financial aid or scholarship dollars to recruit them. So we really struggle to recruit those students, and we find that we have to win them over based on community, culture, and programmatic centers of excellence, because the same African American and Latinx students I'm talking to are talking to Colorado and Berkeley and UCLA and other and SU and Gonzaga, and so I think we do have the additional challenge for now still of I-200, but I think the real challenge for us is understanding that if you just look at the LSAT numbers and the metrics where we are for 75th, 50th, and 25th percentile, and the number ranges that we're working in, it's highly competitive, and we have just got to win more of those competitions. And this year, our class size this year was 165 on the date of that school started, and for race and ethnic minorities, for diversities, 27% of the class sort of self-identifies. And the overall number is not bad, but the challenge is that's disproportionately overrepresentation among Asian and Asian subgroups. And the number of African American students has been consistent for the last several years at 5. The percentage is higher this year because our class is smaller this year, but it's been about 5 enrolled. The good news story for us is that our Latinx numbers are up. We've seen like a 33% increase steadily for 2 years in a row, and I'm hoping that's signaling a trend in both our applicant pool and our yield. But we have to fight very hard. Diversity is at the core of our school. It's one of the most important values. It's important to creating a profession that services the needs of multiple communities, but it's a dogfight to get students in the door when you think about the most important driver for them is debt. And a public school, which has a public mission but is still charging in-state students $37,000 a year. When I didn't pay it, the United States Navy paid it, but it was $2,400 a year to go to a public school in California. So that's a significant change in a 20-year history. So that's the challenge.
Yeah, we face similar challenges. I would agree it's a dogfight. And, being in Seattle, I think there's certain advantages in terms of drawing people to this community. We are a smaller community and a less diverse community, and I think that impacts decisions that students make. Our entering class this past year was 139 students, and 16% of them self-identified as diverse. That number is up 4% from last year for us at Gonzaga. To me, the number is still unacceptably low, and I'd like to see us get to the 25% range. That's where we are at our undergraduate campus, so we're doing some things in terms of how we scholarship and where we're recruiting to try to see better results in future years.
So access to underrepresented groups has been long a priority at Seattle University School of Law. I do think we benefit from being in Seattle, but I also agree it's an unbelievably competitive world out there. There are far fewer applications generally to law school than there used to be, and students have a lot of choices. I think we need to do more pipeline work. What we really should be looking at is how do we expand the number of students of color who are seeking to go to law school. And then in terms of our own work within the law school, we've found that it's helped to have created a critical mass. Our entering class this year is 229 students. 40% of them are students of color. 17% are LGBTQ. 5% are veterans. So we're working very hard to create a lot of different forms of diversity in our law school. And the other thing I would say is it doesn't stop there. So first of all, pedal to the metal all the time. You can never stop in terms of pipeline programs, the work we do in bringing the students in, convincing them to stay in state so that talent stays here. But also the work you need to do to support those folks while they're in law school. This is the inclusion work. So it's not just about numbers diversity. It's how do you create an environment in which those students thrive. And we do spend a fair amount of time working on that. It's one of the reasons why we love to have the minority bar organizations come in and do their meetings, because we're trying to create community for students. And we absolutely can use your help on that.
Right. Eugene. Then I got you on the list, Sunita.
Hi, thank you. Dean Clark, you said something really interesting about how it would be helpful to have the BOG meetings at the school. And in fact, that's something that I've kind of been pushing for the last year and a half, but it just never seemed to happen for whatever reason. And so I think it's really important that we do engage with the law students, and we provide opportunities for them to see what we do and to engage with us and ask questions and get more information. So not really a question, more of kind of a request to the new executive director and with the incoming president that we do look into this and see if we can make this happen. It sounds like they are able to provide the space and whatever else to allow that to happen. So if we can make that happen this year or the next year with Governor Cicchetti, that would be great. Thank you.
Can I just add a comment? We've seen the power of the Washington Supreme Court traveling. It's incredible when they come to your school. And they go not just to universities and schools. And so we're the BOG to do the same sort of thing. And it wouldn't have to be all of your meetings, but rotating, going to Spokane. I think it would send a really strong message. And it would help with what Mario said, which is how do you get them information as to what you're doing and why what you're doing will be important to them as practicing lawyers, frankly, why it's important to them as students.
Just the addition, the added notion that, evenings and weekends are easiest because of classroom scheduling. Actually, weekends, evenings, and Fridays, when we seem to have
Fridays
fewer
are really
classes, I can't imagine why, but professor self-selection mostly. But so, and it's also the contract. Yeah, and the beauty is if the students aren't in class, it frees them up to also attend. So it's not just about the space itself. It's about being there when students are more likely to not have classes, so that you can get the seats in the room.
All right. Thank you. Dan B.
Hello, I'm Dan Bridges. Thank you all for coming, especially our dean from Gonzaga. This is one of my favorite times of the year when you come here, because I think it reminds us of the profession and the renewal of the process, and constantly replenishing the well. My question to you is, last time you were here, you gave us an update of law school admissions that made me think, oh my gosh, are we going to be able to support 3 law schools in this state, in terms of how folks' applications were falling off, and you made a conscious decision to, and not to slight anyone you didn't let in, but to maintain quality over quantity, and you decreased your admissions purposely. I was just wondering if you could give us an update on the current status. How are applications going and admittees in terms of numbers and such?
You can start. Yeah,
Applications nationally were down about 1.5%. So we've hit kind of a plateau period after many years of even double-digit drops in applications. But you need to look at regionally. In the Northwest region in which our schools sit, applications were down 8%. And that's year over year. So that's 8% down from last year, last year was maybe up a little bit from the prior year. So it continues to be a struggle. It means that it made sense for all of us to downsize. We are smaller law schools than we used to be. It appears to be a new normal. And as I said, competition for qualified law students is intense. I don't know if anybody wants to add.
Jacob. I think Annette captured it perfectly. I mean, I don't have much to add. It's a super competitive environment. I think we have 3 strong law schools in the region, and I think each of us would say that we're going to see our schools continue to flourish and I think become even stronger. That means we have to innovate. We have to change our thinking about some sacred cows, and legal education. But this region has a lot to offer in terms of its natural beauty, and I think that is a draw. That I came from the East Coast where there were too many law schools in many states, and the competition is stiff there as well. We're competitors, of course, but we also collaborate, and I think that we're going to see heightened attention from applicants to our schools, but we're going to have to find them in different places.
Bill, can I ask a quick follow-up?
Yes.
I'm not too worried about the UW, given its public status, but Dean Clark knows better than anyone in this room what happens when when a larger campus decides that its law school is no longer something it wants to keep around. We both were in some very interesting meetings.
That was a very lucrative business deal for the University of Puget Sound.
And we won't go into that at all. I guess my only question is not to ask a question that suggests an answer, but I mean seriously, I mean what is if those numbers are maintained over time, I mean how does having two private law schools look in the future? I'd hate to lose either of those institutions, and we've seen that undergrad campuses are willing to make some of those hard fiscal decisions sometimes.
Yeah, I think we've made the structural changes that we needed to live within this new normal. Certainly our universities require that we do that because they're not interested in subsidizing legal education forever, although certainly that's been a part of working through this process. So I'm not terribly concerned about the viability of 3 law schools. I actually think we're all viable. We all do something different. We have a different niche. What concerns me, and I'll just be very public about this, is the continued conversation by the University of Washington Tacoma to start a law school there. They did a study a few years ago. They decided to put it on the back burner because of the ghastly state of the legal education market in terms of applications. The chancellor down there brought it up again recently. If we were to add a 4th law school and a 3rd one on the west side of the state, it would be highly problematic. Certainly for us, I won't speak to the University of Washington. And it would be surprising to me that would be a good use of public dollars, given the fact that we're all working to fill the seats that we have and we're all much smaller. And certainly, my university, in terms of lobbying, is having those conversations, but I just want all of you to know what a threat that would be in terms of long-term viability for legal education in this state.
And this took place before I arrived, but there was a sort of MOU between the University of Washington in Seattle and the Tacoma campus to run a sort of pilot by sending one professor down there to work with students as they initially sought sort of philanthropic funding for what could potentially be a law school. And so the UW Seattle campus discontinued that relationship before I got there, but the legislature did fund them for a legal pathways program. And I think the goals of the legal pathways program are laudable. I think it is to increase underrepresented individuals in the profession and to focus attention on communities that need access to justice. I agree that it would be a challenge in the current market, which has been declining really since 2008 in terms of the number of applications, to stand up a brand new law school. And I told the chancellor, I just came from a brand new law school, the University of California, Irvine. I went there in the first year. It didn't exist as a law school before I got there. The enormous amount of resources it took from the University of California to build that law school into a sort of top 20-ish law school within a decade. I can't see the state investing solely from state dollars. There would have to be a huge influx, I think, of private philanthropy. And so I haven't seen their plan, and I think the goals are laudable. I think the populations and communities are important for service. I just don't know how you make the finances work, because it's really expensive.
We budget conservatively. We have right-sized our operation over a period of years, and we generate revenue for our university. So I don't have any concern at all about our long-term or short-term or medium-term viability. We're also, right at the crux of the mission of the institution in our pursuit of social justice as a Jesuit institution. So I think, on the positive side, the difficult times in legal education have brought law schools closer to their universities, and those that have strong universities to partner with are in good shape, and I think will continue to be. The law schools that I think are facing the more difficult challenges are the freestanding law schools, and we don't have one of those. So I think in our case, for example, it's changed how we recruit faculty. We just hired 2 new faculty. One, like Dean Clark, has a medical degree in addition to a law degree, and this was a very strategic move for us. We were hiring in the area of health law. Gonzaga and UW have partnered in a medical school endeavor in Spokane. So we're finding ways to be of service and of value to other components of the university, and I think that makes a law school like ours, I'm going to use the word indispensable to the rest of the university.
All right, just a little warning. At 3:15, we're going to have to stop, and I'm not going to cut anybody off here. So to try to condense our questions, I'm going to go with Sunitha first. Paul, you are on the list, but she hasn't asked a question yet. So go ahead. You're on.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. I am governor, but I'm also a member of the Diversity Committee for WISBA. We have a pipeline project, which I think you might be familiar with. Although, Dean Rooksby, we haven't been able to connect with Gonzaga yet, so I'm hoping that after today that will change. I had the good fortune to participate in the pipeline project. We did a resume workshop at Seattle U, and I met with 4 or 5 students. I was on a panel at UW, and the responses from the students were just incredible, and it was great work. I'm wondering, for the 2 deans who are aware of our pipeline project, are there any things that we can do to strengthen that connection? I know we're planning to do it again. And then for Dean Rooksby, how can we get you on board?
Mine is an easy answer. We have a person in our development office, Lisa Castilleja, who is essentially our point person for all of our pipeline programs, who does a wonderful, and starting with high school programs up through undergraduate programs, who's done a wonderful job at bringing partners in to host programming. And I would just encourage you to reach out to us through Lisa and schedule, because what I think one of the issues is I don't think we have enough opportunities throughout the year. We have a slate of activities that we've been doing, but as you know, you have to constantly in this space reinvent yourself and think about more innovative ways to reach the populations you're trying to influence. So I would be happy to have you and folks from my team think about ways that we can partner to do more. It seems that it's a natural synergy.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, definitely ditto on that. The importance of going to where the students are. I was just working on my calendar today to clear up time to go to the Youth in the Law Forum that will be held in Pasco. I think that's a really important part of the pipeline work. It's easy for us to sit and sort of say, come to us, but in particularly the eastern side of the state, there are so many students who haven't had the opportunity to think about legal education and the legal profession as an opportunity. So I think it would be great if you end up partnering with Dean Rooksby, but not just Spokane. It's really going to some of those communities that we know are underserved in terms of lawyers. The possibility then that students who are trained will go back to those communities. And so from my standpoint, I'm trying to make an effort to get out of Seattle, out of the law school, and doing that pipeline work.
Okay, interesting.
Count me in. I'd be delighted to talk about it. So maybe after the meeting.
Thank you.
Got it. All right. Thank you, Sunitha. We got Alec, Paul, and then PJ, you'll wrap us up.
Okay. So I wanted to make sure we were actually talking about the same thing when it comes to pipeline. So I'd like to hear from you what that looks like. And oh, by the way, I'm a University of Puget Sound, Benaroya, Business Park graduate. Happy to be now Seattle U.
So we have, so we run a summer program actually aimed at high school students in the summer to bring them in and start them thinking as early as high school about law as a profession. But we have a number of activities for the minority pre-law association where we bring them into the law school and host them for events. And I think we now have 2 separate LSAT grants from the Law School Admissions Council for pipeline programs to now go out into the community and host events where the goal of which is Annette's point of meeting students where they are and trying to get them assistance with the types of things we find are problems. One, so few of our students who are even interested in law or underrepresented have access to things like preparation courses for the LSAT. Even though there are scholarship and different things they can access, they need critical help with applications, understanding the point of what those personal statements are and how to sort of translate what they really want as sort of aspirations for themselves in law into good applications. And I think what we've been doing so far has been largely bringing groups in and trying to train them both in the great sort of diversity of opportunities the profession offers, but then also in the pragmatics of how to get support for a practice course for the LSAT, how to get support for doing your resume and your personal statement. I think with the grants we're getting now from LSAT, it's going to be more projecting into the community and going into other places like hosted events like Youth Law Forums and others where we are there as a presence, and then people are already there and see, here are the deans or representatives from the law school if that's one of your interests. I'm sure Judge McCullough will make sure that we are there and it is in April or May, but we need to be doing more of the projecting ourselves outward. But right now we have a slate of activities funded internally and by the LSAC to do that.
I wanted to mention that we entered into a partnership last year with Eastern Washington University, which has the most diverse student body of any higher ed institution in our region, our side of the state. And it was precisely to try to find ways to provide information about law and law school to students who maybe weren't receiving it beforehand. So we're doing things like internships for undergraduates, talking about a 3+3 agreement, things of this nature that would I think, help our student body.
And I would be remiss if I didn't talk about our Access Admissions Program, which is the culmination of pipeline work. We, for 35 years, have brought in 10% of our entering class. Those are students whose academic credentials would not otherwise get them admitted to our law school. They tend to come from underrepresented communities. We then provide them with academic support that continues on through their 3 or 4 years with us in law school. And so it goes back to working within the pipeline, but then making sure as these students come in, and certainly as you take them into the profession, that they continue to be supported.
All right. Thank you. PJ and then Paul. Or other way around, Paul and PJ. I think that's how I
Well, I know we're out of town, so I'll just very quickly say that I think working with Kevin Platchy and others on the staff, a great way to bring programming into the law schools is through the sections and through something akin to open sections night, but bringing some of the sections in and letting folks learn about what the sections do and how that relates to career and professional networking. So I'll work with you and we'll reach out.
We have a very active career services department, and it does a lot of work with firms, government, public interest. It doesn't do as much work with inviting the bar in as a way of exposing students to. So one point that we could build greater confluence around is having the sections liaison with our career and student services department to include them within the slate of activities that we're providing to our students year over year.
We'll do that.
Thank you. PJ.
I'm the board liaison to the Triple LT board, and this group has struggled with the Triple LT concept. We only have 30-some active Triple LTs after a number of years, and I think that all of us, including Justice Gonzalez, would be interested in the views that any of you have on the Triple LT program and what can be done to make it more vital, if that's possible.
So, no, they don't, but they do. It's a training program that we are one of the providers of that training. So this is you have to tread lightly here, because I think one of the issues, and the bar is going to have to make this decision to address it, is would the program expand and produce more practitioners, technicians, if it were possible to do work in a greater number of areas of law, because it's a very limited, currently, sort of practice option in triple LT. And so it's, in some ways, I think if we want to think about growing the program, then you also have to think about growing the number of options for people, and what areas of law are amenable to training people to provide this level of service without necessarily then requiring attorneys. And so I don't presume to suggest to the bar how that expansion should happen, but I think some of what is dictating what has been the slow growth has been the sort of narrow subject matter focus. At least that's been part of what the folks teaching in my program, when I asked why don't we have more triple OT, what is it, and that's been part of the feedback.
We haven't been terribly involved. We did help with the original curriculum. I think it frankly fits better in terms of a state school's mission. Because we have fewer resources than we used to, honestly, we have devoted those resources to working with our law students to get them to focus on serving the public interest and helping to fill that gap. And so we spend a lot of time through our Access to Justice Institute. We've had an incubator program for the past 6 years where we're working to help develop graduates who understand their obligation to serve the public interest, including serving moderate means, low-income individuals, making that a part of their mission, and honestly figuring out what are the business models that would allow them to be able to do that work at a reasonable rate to help fill that gap. And so our focus has been doing that within the JD realm.
I urge caution in any expansion. I think for the reasons that Annette just articulated, I think the effort would be better spent on, and we're doing it, impressing upon JD students the importance of access to justice initiatives and how they can participate. I think I would suggest looking at what has occurred in the medical field over the past 20-some years, where there have been the creation of new professional degree opportunities within the field of medicine. And I think if you ask many physician groups, they would say it came at the expense of their professional autonomy and role in the medical realm. So I would hate to see a similar thing happen within law, because I think the JD continues to be the best, robust, all-service type of credential that is needed. The solution, though, is to make sure that our students understand the importance of serving the public and underserved communities.
All right, very good. Thank you very much. That concludes our question and answer period. To the deans, hats off to all of you. Thank you so much for being here. We'll hope this conversation continues next year and onward. And again, thank you. At this point in time, we are about 6 minutes behind, but we're going to take a very short 5-minute break to set up the podium over here, and then we're going to have some swearing in.